Okay, are we all here?
Dave's here.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Dave.
Oh,
Hello.
hello.
Okay, I think we are all here. And I am going to do two things quickly. One is to ask if everybody has read the minutes of the last meeting.
Yes,
Yes.
Any additions or corrections?
no,
If not, may I have a motion to approve as sent?
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, vote is so ordered. Now Jennifer is with us. And I would like to greet her, thank her very, very much for attending the meeting tonight, and let her speak first about the position of the state-held lands that are our near neighbors to the Whiting Street Reservoir. Is that all right with you, Jennifer?
Sure.
Great.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, well, thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to the meeting. I think some of your faces look familiar to me. So I'm the Director of Land Protection at DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation. And we've been working in this area for years to try to, protect Mount Tom. We own Mount Tom State Reservation. So just to be clear, so I can talk a little bit. My understanding is you want to understand sort of what land we own surrounding the Whiting Street Reservoir and what our plans for it are. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and also a little bit regarding the interrelationship between the reservoir and the properties that you guys hold.
Yeah. So have you looked at maps that show the ownership? Because I have one on my screen that I can share with you if you want me to and point to it. But if you feel does that make sense?
Well, if it will help us understand what you're saying as you go along, yes, let's do that.
It might. I think that whoever is the host may need to give me the ability. If you click on the share screen, you have to say that, give me the ability to share mine.
Marlene, can you do that?
I can't because it's disabled on your Zoom account. So I would have to come over there and mess around with your Zoom.
It's okay.
No, I can't do it then. We're gonna have to get into the
Okay,
workings.
don't worry about it. So anyway, I guess what I could start is we own and manage the Mount Tom State Reservation, which is located to the north of the Whiting Street Reservoir. We also own a little piece. So the access road that's gated, that's right off of Route, you come in off of Route 5. We own land just, on the right side of that, headed down to the gate. And then sort of in the middle there, just north of the reservoir, is where we worked in the early 2000s with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club, and the trustees of reservations to protect like 380 acres, kind of just north of the reservoir. And we did that, and as a partnership, we protected that land, and DCR bought the northerlymost 144 acres, which is now part of the reservation. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, if you've looked at maps, owns what used to be the old ski slope. The trustees own Little Mount Tom, which we hold a conservation restriction over. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I can talk about that in a little bit. And then the Boys and Girls Club, up until December, owned the land that used to be where the old ski buildings, the ski area, the developed part of the ski area. And we actually hold a conservation restriction on that as well. And the quarry site is still owned by, right now it's owned by Mount Tom Companies, which is the same company that owned all the land back when they operated the ski area. Same owners, the companies have changed a bit. So that's kind of the ownership. The Mount Tom Company's folks recently bought the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club land. We still hold a conservation restriction over it. And just from the big picture, our goal back then in trying to protect the backside of Mount Tom was really to protect sort of the larger Mount Tom landscape for public recreation, particularly for the residents of Holyoke, but also the larger region, and also to protect there are a lot of important rare and endangered plants and animals on the whole landscape. And it's part of our larger vision where, you know, we also own a lot of land up along the Holyoke Range. And so this really creates a really large corridor of protected land for, you know, people to recreate in, for wildlife to move through, and just protects, you know, as you know, it's your hometown, really like an iconic mountain and the whole Holyoke Range. So that's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. I live in East Hampton, and so I walk the reservoir all the time. I walk the loop road around it. And I just feel like it's really an integral part, at least from my perspective, of that whole Mount Tom landscape. And I know years ago, my predecessor had
Kip
talked.
has a question. Kip,
Oh,
you're
yep,
on mute though.
you're on mute, Kit.
I got an email. 2 people are trying to join the meeting. They're in the waiting room.
Thank you. I'll get them.
Kate and Jeff Haran. Sorry to interrupt. I just thought it was.
Thank
No,
you.
that's good.
There they come.
There you go.
Great.
Sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Kip.
So shall I keep going, or do we want to?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Kip.
So I guess what I was saying is that my predecessor years ago, you know, in the early 2000s, I think may have talked with some folks on the water board at the time, wondering if the city was interested in maybe permanently protecting the reservoir, which I know is protected for water supply purposes. But I think, you know, as I understand it, what your group is doing is looking at potential future uses of it, what that might be. So I think from our perspective, we would love to see that the whole Whiting Street Reservoir protected as part of the larger Mount Tom landscape, and would be willing to talk with you further. I'd be willing to talk with you further, or with other folks in the city about, you know, ideas for that. A couple of minutes ago, I mentioned that we hold conservation restrictions on the Little Mount Tom piece, which the trustees own, as well as on the former Boys and Girls Club property. And I don't know if folks are familiar with conservation restrictions, but basically it's a legal agreement between the landowner and the land trust or state agency or town that holds the conservation restriction, to make sure that the property is never developed and that it's always held for conservation purposes. And they're quite flexible. You know, you can tailor them to the basic conservation and recreation purposes or water supply protection purposes that you're interested in, but really it does prevent development. So I probably might be more useful for you to ask me questions, or let me know what particular areas you might want to know more about.
Does anybody, I know Sue looks to be on the phone. Does anybody have any questions specifically based on what Jennifer's currently talking about before we?
I do mine, Marlene.
Thanks, Terry.
I always assumed that the whole reservoir and the land by it, owned by the water department, was under conservation restriction, but it's not just the water is?
So my understanding, so it's protected because the city owns it for water supply protection purposes. A conservation restriction is sort of another conservation tool that kind of splits the ownership a little bit, so that, so right now, I think my understanding is that the city, if it wanted to, could file legislation, and if you weren't using it for water anymore, it could file legislation and sell it, or sell portions of it. With a conservation restriction held by, you know, a land trust or a state agency, that couldn't happen.
Okay.
So it adds another layer of protection on it. We're actually working right now with your neighbors to the south, town of West Springfield, to permanently protect the Bear Hole Reservoir. So we've been working with Mass Audubon and the city for a couple of years now, and we're getting fairly close. We're DCR and Mass Audubon are actually acquiring a conservation restriction on their watershed land because they're not using it anymore for watershed, and they want to make sure it stays the way it is forever. And you know, we're paying for it, so it's a way for the city to generate a little income as well.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
But that really wasn't, I mean, that's sort of big picture, but I think, you know, in response to the kind of questions that I think you're asking of abutters, you know, our plans for our land abutting you or almost abutting you are really, you know, conservation and recreation. I think that the increased use of the Whiting Street Reservoir for recreation lately, really it's just amazing to see how many people are there. And I see people walking north. And, you know, the trustees have created a trail that people could connect to. And then there are also trails on the state reservation just to the north that you could just walk right to and keep going. So I think that connectivity for people and for wildlife is really important.
Jennifer, what kind of restrictions do you put on conservation recreation?
So on our property or through, so on
your
our
property.
property, say that again,
For instance, on Quabbin.
on Quabbin. Well, Quabbin's a little different because that's a Quabbin Reservoir is held by our Division of Water Supply Protection, and it's an active drinking water supply. There is recreation. There's no boating or swimming in the reservoir. I mean, there's trail use. And actually is some boating, no swimming. But I think just in terms of the state park side, in terms of restrictions, every facility is a little bit different, but generally everything is open to hiking. Some places not here allow mountain biking. Mount Tom does not allow motorized vehicles or hunting. Passive recreation generally. With conservation restrictions, when we hold a conservation restriction and another entity is a landowner, so for example, the trustees of reservations, they own the land on Little Mount Tom, and we hold a conservation restriction, and the public does have access for recreation, but the rules and regulations are set by the trustees because they're the landowner. Similarly, that was the case with the Boys and Girls Club. And will be the case with the town of West Springfield as well. Any other thoughts? I don't know if,
I do.
yeah.
Jennifer, would there be a downside to the water department, for the water department, if they held the conservation restriction too?
They can't. So I guess, are they, excuse me, are they the owners?
Yes,
Yes.
Or is it the city? Is it this, I don't know the structure. I don't know if the water board is a part of the city or if it's separate. But go ahead.
They are the owners. It's quasi municipal property.
Right. So the owners can't hold a conservation, you can't hold a conservation restriction on your own land. So the idea of a conservation restriction is that, like, when you own property, you own a number of different rights, right? So the analogy is like, you know, a bundle of sticks. And when you sell or convey a conservation restriction or an easement or any of the rights, you separate that right off and convey it to another owner. So with a conservation restriction, for example, if the city wanted to convey a conservation restriction to us, we would hold that restriction, and you know, we would be you would be the owners of the land, and we would hold the restriction. And the whole idea is it's sort of a check and balance in a way. It adds a second level of protection so that in order to do anything, it takes two parties to agree. I mean, it doesn't have to be the state. It could be, I mean, if you wanted to permanently protect it, it could be a local land trust. If, you know, if the city was more interested in that, if you were interested in that at all.
So
So Jennifer, this is Jeff Horan. I'm a little curious about the fact that it is already protected under, I think, Chapter 97, or so there are protections, and it would have to go through a pretty significant process to, if it were going to if it weren't going to remain that way. But would it still retain its, if we added this additional layer of protection, if that was what was decided here, how, I mean, would the appraisal come in for the, what portion of the development rights would still be available to come to the city in a sale of the development rights, since it is already protected? I know again, that would require an appraisal, but that's confusing to me, since it seems
Yeah,
like development
it
rights.
is. Yeah, it is a little confusing. I guess the thinking is, so if the city, you're right now, under Article 97, which is, a section of the amendments to the Constitution, in order for land that's held for conservation or water supply protection purposes, in order for a city or a town or the state, because all the land we hold is protected by Article 97 as well, in order to convey that land out, which we generally don't do, you would need to file a bill, and it needs to pass by 2/3 vote of the legislature. So that is difficult, but generally, especially for municipal dispositions, if the city wants to do it, the legislative delegation is usually on board and those bills can pass. So it's cumbersome and takes a long time, but it's definitely doable. So that's the first part of the question. Did you want to ask? You can feel free. You can just hop in.
No. Again, I'm still curious about, how much,
Yeah.
might the city see in, how much value is left to benefit the city if we were to put a CR on the
Right.
further.
So basically, if it were us and you were working together, we would get an appraisal done. And what the appraiser would do was figure out what the highest and best use of the land is right now. And again, assuming that the city passes a bill and is going to sell it. So what's the development potential that the city could see if you just sold it on the open, if you got, you were authorized to convey it and sold it on the open market. So that would be the before value. Then they would look at, what we would want, what any conservation restriction buyer would want was all the development rights would be extinguished for the most part, right? So then they'd look at what it would be worth afterwards. And that's pretty much conservation, recreation, and water supply protection. And then the value of the conservation restriction is the difference between those two things. And so really what the value of the conservation restriction is the rights you're giving up or the right to develop. So your question is what development value will be left after putting a CR on it? I mean, unless we came up with some excluded area that you wanted to keep out and potentially sell for development, the answer is no development value, because you would have already been paid for all of that.
Yeah, actually, what I was concerned about was that, the Article 97 wouldn't leave any value since that protection exists. But you're saying since we could vote and eliminate that protection, that development value is actually still there. And so
Yes.
the city could reap some, the city would benefit financially through a sale of the development rights.
Right. And it's all going to depend on, I was looking at this before the meeting. I know the Whiting Street Reservoir has frontage on 141. I don't have a good sense right now because mostly I just use it for hiking, but I haven't really looked into how developable it is. You guys might have. But in answer to your question, yes. I mean, I've seen appraisals where there might be a small discount factor based on like time or the bother of what the city, because it's not ready to go. You can't put it on the market tomorrow. So I feel like I've seen appraisals put in a little bit of a discount, basically for the city to do its voting, get the legislation passed, sort of similar to a lot of properties where it might be very challenging property to develop. So there'd be like a lengthy permitting process. And I've seen appraisers, discount out some value in that just because it's the cost of doing business of a person that would buy it. It's the cost of doing business. Similar, totally different, but, analogous in that way in terms of its impacts on value. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
So that process of of establishing the value through an appraisal, is that something that DCR takes on, or is that something that the property owner, in this case, the city, or through the water department would look at, what is the maximum value of the development rights of the reservoir?
So the way our process works is, so if we were interested, if you guys were interested in pursuing this and the city said to me, Jennifer, we want to look into this more seriously. We're interested in seeing, what we're interested in doing this. We have a long process. I'd go out, take a much closer look at all the land. I'd bring it to, our lands committee. We have an internal process. So we go through that, say it gets approved, and we say, yes, if the city and DCR can reach agreement, DCR is ready to go. So we get to that point. When we get to that point, we would hire an appraiser who would then, an independent appraiser, we'd send out, a request for proposals. We'd get a couple bids, select someone, hire an appraiser who would then walk the property with whoever from the city wanted to, and then they would produce an appraisal. And then our offer would be based on that. Similarly, we would cover pretty much all the rest of the due diligence associated with it. We need to do a title examination. I guess that would be it.
So that could be pretty significant value. Potentially, but it could be the development rights around the reservoir. I could see that easily. I'm going to make up a number, being $1 million. It's not 10 grand. It's not 50 grand. It's just pretty significant. It's certainly something worth considering.
It's certainly not 10 grand or 50 grand. I don't know about $1 million. I'm just thinking about the work with West Springfield. I guess it's about 1,400 acres. But again, it all depends on how much road frontage there is and how developable the road frontage is. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it would be as high as $1 million. I don't know if we would have $1 million to spend. But it would be significant. I think it would be significant.
What is West Springfield getting?
Can't say.
Oh, you can't? Okay, I figured
No.
that's public information.
Well,
but-
we're still in an active negotiation.
Fine,
So
fine.
once
It will
it's
be
done-
public, but it's not public yet.
Right. So with some luck, it'll be public
Negotiating.
soon.
But it's significant. It's certainly worth considering.
That's my feeling. Yes. It is significant.
Did West Springfield have to, or are they ongoing, changing the status they're in now to switch to the status that you're describing?
They discontinued, and I don't know if they were doing this anyway. They discontinued the water supply. They discontinued with DEP I guess it was a backup water supply. They discontinued that. And in terms of changing their status, they worked with their legislative delegation and us to file legislation. My guess is someone from their shop would be willing to talk with you to tell you
Yeah. Okay.
from their perspective. Their city council, we worked the mayor, we worked with their city council. We spent many months meeting with their city council to go over the language and, explain what the story was and just get their input. Can I ask you, what is the current status of the Whiting Street Reservoir from the water supply protection perspective?
Is Mr. Manzi with us? Okay, if he's not, I'll take it. It is offline. And the reason it's been offline is that we have a malfunctioning, broken down dam, which is to be repaired in the next, I would say, 2 years. I think they're planning on starting this summer, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think he said, and you guys correct me, but I think he said they were going to be going out for bid for the work by spring or summer so that the work would be done
In 22.
in 22.
And just to clarify, I don't think that the dam, there's no problems with the dam. The spillway needs to be, the spillway in order to handle the current regs for that size of dam needs to be significant.
To get it to they needed to get it to 1,000-year flood.
Right.
to meet the current regs.
Yeah.
So they're saying it's in reserve. And so that's another question, Jennifer, that if we wanted it to remain in reserve and at some point it became a functioning reservoir, that would be equivalent to working land. So that could still, would seem like a CR could still be appropriate there. There'd be no development. It would just be a working reservoir.
Yeah, I do want, so right now it's in reserve, and once you fix it, will it still be a backup water supply? Yes, right?
That's what they said.
So that's what the water department has told us.
So I guess, so everything I said, I still believe is true. I would like to look into it a little bit further and maybe talk to an appraiser, one of our appraisers who works with us regularly, and then maybe get back to you, because I think especially with the improvements being done and that you want to actively maintain it as, you know, something that you could go online with immediately. I mean, you still could sell it. So I think that big assumption that if the city changes its mind and wants to sell it, it could, and that really would be what they would base their appraisal on. But before, I don't want to mislead you. So I just want to double check that and get back to you with that information after speaking with an appraiser to see if the status of your watershed land would impact their valuation at all.
Then let me give you a little more information. It's about 230 acres. The reservoir itself is about 120 of those acres, and it lies at the eastern side of a precipitous watershed and has the highest recharge rate of any of the reservoirs the city owns.
So it's valuable for water.
Yeah.
In addition, the pump house at the east side of it, adjacent to 91, as you'll recall, Mr. Conti informing us, has just been completely renovated to make the possibility of using it in an emergency likely, because of the fact that their governing body made them do that.
Mhm.
It could work tomorrow if it had.
So I don't know. I talked to Marlene a bit. I'm not sure what you've all been talking about, but I don't know if you want to share with me. I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, we sort of jumped to the conservation restriction idea, but I mean, honestly, if the city feels like, you know, you're improving it now and you're feeling like you definitely want to protect it as a water supply, you might not need us. You know, you might not need a conservation restriction on it at this point. I feel like the time when towns often, I mean, obviously income is important, but the time when communities often come to us is when there's a feeling that there might be some risk, or there's, you know, maybe some folks in town are talking about selling some of it off, and others, you know, when there may be some, or things are so great that, you know, you want to take this opportunity to protect it as it is right now. So I think, you know, again, it's a lot to think about. It's just really one option that I thought might make sense to bring up.
Basically a very good option to know about, because our charge from the city council essentially is to look at all of the options and then make recommendations based on weighing and balancing those options, looking into the future and trying to be as prescient as we can be.
Yeah, not to talk too much about West Springfield, but so as I said, right now they're not looking at it as a backup, and they think for them to bring it back up to snuff, it would be very costly. However, there are a number of people in town and on the boards that wanted to make sure that that was always an option. So we wrote that in to the, you know, we wrote that that's part of what they will have the right to do, to make improvements at any point in the future so that they can bring the whole thing back online as a water supply.
So that could be a function of an agreement, negotiated agreement, and such a conservation restriction.
Yes, and I mean, it seems like you're in that spot now. I mean, you're not actively using it for a water supply, but you're much more active than, for example, they are.
Got it. Terry, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, not a question. I kind of agree with Sue Ellen. I don't think we should go much farther, with appraisals until the water department at least knows what we're doing.
Correct.
I'm afraid we're gonna set off a lot of alarm bells, like, oh, the city's planning on selling or not selling. And that's, far from the case. I think it's a bit of self-protection to just pull back a little until we collect all our information.
I think,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Just to
Yeah, no, I
clarify,
was gonna-
we would not go, I'm sorry, Marlene, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think what we're sort of in the, along what Terry was thinking, the idea here is for us to gather as much information about all the options, alternatives, opportunities, and
Yeah.
then think through what we think makes sense. So, yeah.
Sure. And I guess just to clarify, I was not at all suggesting we would start an appraisal. That's a big deal for us. It costs a lot of money. And there are a lot of steps internally that I would need to take. Like, even if you said go right now, I'd have to take a lot of steps to get internal approval for the project. And then we would start an appraisal. I think what I was saying before is in response to Jeff's questions about value and the current status, would there still, even the current status as a water supply, would there still be value you could get out of it if you chose to move forward? And I said yes, and I still think that's true, but I was just going to make a phone call to an appraiser who we work with to try to just get some more information so that I could get back to you with something a little bit more defense, just with more clarity about what sort of the magnitude of that value might be, just to make sure what I said was accurate after double checking with an appraiser.
It would be my opinion not to do that.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
It's
Not to
totally up
find
to
out
you.
more info. Yeah, go ahead. Not to find out more information, Dave?
No, keep finding information, but I wouldn't ask Jennifer to go and just begin up, and not even beginning, just to get any information from someone who doesn't really understand what authority we have, what authority we don't have, much like Terry thought. I'm in that business, and it would be easy for it to get ahead of us.
Yeah.
With all due respect and to the great information we're getting tonight.
Yeah.
That's
I
fine.
get
I'm
it.
happy not to call anyone. I just offered it because I just wanted to make sure that what I said was
Absolutely.
100% true.
No, I appreciate all that, and I'm just saying there's time for that.
Sure. So then I guess what I would leave you, like, I'm not saying I have to go right now, but I guess what I would leave you with in terms of valuation is what Kip, you were saying. I think it's not 10,000, probably not $1 million, but it's potentially significant somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah.
Depending on how much development potential there is and what the current, how much the current status as a protected water supply, how much that impacts the valuation.
Right.
And Jennifer, I think, again, since I joined the meeting late, I think you might have been explaining it, but you said that the state could hold the conservation easement, but we could also have, for instance, Kestrel hold the conservation easement.
Kestrel, the trustee, any qualified 501c3 land trust that holds conservation restrictions is eligible to hold it. And, if they're willing and you would rather work with them or want to work with them, that would be great.
Now, could the funding still, for instance, if, say, we worked with Kestrel, could the funding still come through the state?
So it wouldn't come through us. There are grants. So the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs does run several grant programs for land protection. Kestrel is very good at applying for and getting those grants. I don't know, and they also raise money, so it would really be up to them and you. But again, it's going to depend on the magnitude of the purchase price and how much capacity a land trust would have. In West Springfield, we're partnering with Mass Audubon for a lot of the same reasons, to have both a state and a land trust partner, and both to pool funds and also to, address concerns with maybe everyone doesn't want the state, maybe everyone doesn't want a land trust. So we're doing it together.
And so this could likely be a partnership as well.
Could be, sure. We do partnerships all the time.
Thank
And
you.
also the other thing is, like, from my perspective, we have always, we love this, this is one of our priority areas. We love this area. I would love to see the Whiting Street Reservoir permanently protected, either through a commitment of the city or some conservation restrictions. So however you feel is best to do it, I think we would be completely supportive of that. And we would provide whatever, if it wasn't us, whatever technical assistance or information we could.
Could I ask you another side question? Jennifer, do you know anything about the situation with the kestrels at the quarry? I understand it's become a habitat area.
So with kestrel, not kestrel truss, kestrel the bird, right? Kestrels, is that what you're talking
Kestrel the
about?
bird, yeah.
So the whole area is identified, as I'm sure you know, as rare species habitat for a number of different plants and animals. My understanding, I'm not sure about kestrels, but my understanding is that, I know that peregrine falcons had been known to nest in the quarry walls. I don't think there have been a nesting pair seen there for the last couple of years, but it is prime habitat for their nesting. And, probably maybe a decade ago, I know there were confirmed pairs, and then they were there for several years, and they come and go. They could come back, but I hadn't heard anything about kestrels, but peregrine falcons. I also know that there are little pockets on the cliffy edges, sort of in the walls, where there are some pockets of rare plants growing.
Well, I will remember those.
You should.
Do we have any more questions?
So just to change gears a little bit, do you have any thoughts on integrating and perhaps expanding passive recreational uses of the reservoir into some of the other protected land, improving trails,
I think there's
access, parking, those types of things?
I think there's great potential. I think one of the things that has been kind of hampering the connections has been sort of the quarry parcel and the Boys and Girls Club parcel. That was kind of just, the Boys and Girls Club, when we first worked with them back in 2002, the whole goal of the partnership was really to increase use of this area. And they really wanted to create some sort of education center there. And unfortunately, they just weren't able to, I think, mostly for financial reasons. I think while the quarry was active, it wasn't really safe. But then in 2012, when the quarry stopped, when they stopped actively quarrying, there was opportunity, but I think there was difficulty. And, I'm sure that some of you have heard about what's going on now at the quarry and the surrounding property. As I said, we still hold a conservation restriction on the Boys and Girls Club. It's been bought by the quarry owners. The quarry owners are floating a proposal to fill the quarry. DCR, when we bought the land surrounding it, we also acquired an option on the quarry, and that option limited the prior owners and all the partners worked together to create a situation where the former owners could continue to quarry, so the business opportunity was able to go on for a certain number of years, and that enabled us to keep the quarry to the 16 acres it is, rather than it being as large as 60 at the time. But that whole plan, the future vision was that at some point the quarry would, cease to be operating. The Boys and Girls Club would have been able to build a little education center, and the quarry itself would have ended up being owned by us. And so that would have knitted together the whole landscape. we're still working on that. I still think there's possibility for that to happen. You know, I think without the traffic, it's really, there's a great opportunity to make trail connections. I think there are a lot of trails grants available. And then of course, you know, the trustees do a lot of trail work. They did create a trail. I think until that area is really secured, I feel that everyone's sort of waiting to really make any investments there. But I think the time is ripe, especially with the pandemic. As you know, use has really gone up. So I think there's a great opportunity to integrate it more. Right now, you could walk from the reservoir, as you know, if you keep going over the parking lot, it's over the Boys and Girls Club area. It's not beautiful right now, but if you keep going, you get right to the reservation. So there is a connection there. It just needs a little love.
Well put.
What?
Well put.
And I think that, everyone, all the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the trustees, Boys and Girls Club, DCR, everyone who participated in that acquisition, everyone got a parking area easement over that large parking lot, that large parking area that used to be the ski area parking area, thinking that someday maybe we would want to turn a little piece of it into some sort of a trailhead. So all the pieces are there. So I think there's great opportunity. And our department right now is pretty supportive and interested. Our current commissioner is very interested in recreation. And I think we've just seen with the pandemic, the use of our facilities has just gone up incredibly. And we're really committed to continuing to provide that opportunity for people who really need to just get outside and, be in nature and have the opportunity to exercise, especially given everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, even that little parking lot over on 141 is, jammed with cars all the time. Not parking lot, the little piece of, yeah, little piece of dirt.
Okay, do we have any more questions for Jennifer?
Mike, did you have a question, Counselor?
No, I didn't have a question. If I could interject here for a minute or two, Madam Chair.
Please do.
Yeah, I just really, I just wanted to listen in for a little bit, say hi to everybody. Assure you, I've been following the minutes that are posted and watching the tapes and stuff like that. I'm really pleased with the work the group is doing. I don't want anybody to think it's going unnoticed, and wanted to give everybody, my compliments on the job you're doing and, the devotion you're showing here, towards this valuable and, somewhat precious piece of property we have here, to finally have a good group of people looking into it. If there's anything you need me to do, I have to run because we've got a full city council meeting tonight that I have to get a cup of coffee before that starts. But I've seen the thing about some financial needs and some other stuff. If there's anything you need me to do, just reach out. I'll get the orders filed or, do what I can. Naturally, any financial transfers or allocations of funds have to come from the mayor's office. And I saw those ones go back and forth. So I'd go there first, but I'd be happy if they come through to, sponsor them through the council and expedite whatever we could. And if there's other resources or things you'd like filed with CPA, CDBG, anything else I can help, just reach out and let me know.
Thank you.
Great.
Good to know. Kip, did you have something?
I was just saying thank you.
Okay, so keep up the good work and we'll see you about town.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Well, Jennifer, this has been wonderful and we really appreciate your time. And if you want to hang around and listen to us talk about a letter we have proposing to go out to abutters and talk about how we plan to meet with abutters, feel free. And if you want to go get a cup of coffee, by all means. And again, thanks so much.
Well, thank you. If you, I'm happy to stay, but if you want to just go about your business, I could also just hop off. I just want to assure you, I won't do anything. I won't call anyone. But what I will do is maybe send to Marlene and Sue Ellen. We have a conservation restriction landowner handbook that we've just put together, which has a lot of information about what conservation restrictions
would be-
are. It's not specifically tailored to watersheds, but it does have a lot of information. So maybe I will email that to you
Okay.
for you to share with the group, just to give you some more information.
Okay, one other thing, Jennifer, since we've talked about West Springfield a little bit tonight, if there's somebody in the town of West Springfield that we might want to connect with somewhere, could you share with us contact?
Yeah,
Person.
let me reach out to them. Sure, let me reach out to them and see who best there, to connect you with, and then I'll get back to you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks so
All right,
much. I
yeah,
really
what-
appreciated the opportunity to
Thank
chat
you.
with you.
Well,
Thank you very
Jennifer,
much.
Thank you.
One other thing, if you could get for us any kind of booklet detailing the restrictions on recreation at Quabbin, that would be tremendously helpful.
Okay, I can look into that. I'll do
That'd be
that.
great.
Okay,
Sensational.
thank you.
And again, if you want to hang around, feel free, because we'd love to have you.
Okay. Well, how about I'll just sit quietly, and then if I'll say goodbye now, and if I need to run, I'll just wave and hop off. If that works.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks.
Okay, can we quickly go over the letter that I sent out?
Yes.
I sent it again today because I had some really great edits from Kate Cookmeyer. And then I got some more edits from Marlene, which A, I didn't have time to work with, and B, didn't really seem to make much difference in the intent of the letter, so I didn't fight for the time to get them in there. And the question is, how do you feel about the letter, and are we ready to send it out?
I just have one
And
suggestion.
to whom? Go ahead, Terry.
Can we make it very clear that we're just an advisory board?
Make it
Not
very
us,
clear that
but-
what?
But we are an advisory board.
I can get a word in there.
Mhm.
Clarify advisory status only.
Mhm.
Okay, that probably will work right into that first paragraph,
Yep, it would.
or the second where we introduce ourselves. Anybody else have anything?
Did we really review the laws of the Commonwealth and the federal government?
Yes, we did.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Well, the law, not all of them, certainly only the ones as related to the reservoir.
Okay, sounds kind of legal to me.
I meant it to be. I wanted people to think that we were paying attention.
All right,
And we have reviewed quite thoroughly
I get it. Okay.
the conservation
Oh, yeah.
law, the city law, the water department regulations. They've all been reviewed.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think it's good.
Okay, then, I did this morning write to Mike Sullivan, Dave Bartley, and Jeff Anderson Burgos to ask if we might be able to get some city council stationery and some stamps so that we could write these letters and mail them out. I haven't heard back from anyone except Dave Bartley, who was looking into the availability of those items through some sort of fund that the city council uses to get its mail out. So we do, when we hear back on that, we can go ahead and get the letters out now that they're essentially approved. I have never written down names and addresses of all of the abutters. I think Kate did that, and I think Dave has that
Yes,
on the maps.
yeah,
I wonder if you could email me the owners and their addresses.
yes.
Then when I get my hands on the stationery, we can get these into the mail.
I'll do that.
And obviously, we want to give people at least a week to 10 days before we start calling them to schedule their meetings. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes,
I mean, I just think we have to give them some time to think about what we're asking.
I do too.
I had one question, Sue Ellen.
Yes.
I'm wondering, and I don't know what is okay with our process and what isn't in terms of transparency. I imagine that there might be some abutters who, for whatever reason, might feel a little nervous about coming to a public hearing to talk about their property. I don't know if it's worth offering, and if it would be even advisable to offer, but it occurred to me that some people might be more interested in saying, talking one-on-one with one of us just to transmit their ideas and thoughts and questions, and then we could report back, that person could report back to the committee. I don't know if that's advisable to do or not, but I thought in looking at the letter, I was wondering whether we might offer alternative pathways for people to present their questions and ideas to us.
Well, the one owner that we've specifically spoken with, Harry, do you want to talk about your discussion with Eric Shore?
Yeah, when I talked to Eric after finding all his properties that are on Mount Tom area, he only wants to talk about the old Mountain Park parcel. He does not want to talk about any of his other parcels. And he does have some plans in place that he wants to bring forth to develop his property in conjunction with some of the reservoir, and I think I'll leave it at that. That he has some plans that he really feels that would make a good addition to the whole area, including the reservoir and the surrounding parcels.
Now, Harry, did he catch me up with my memory? Did he say that he wanted to come and talk with our
Yes.
group?
Yes, he wants to talk to our whole group. Yes, yes.
So he's
And
ready.
again, only on the Mountain Park property, not on the his golf course or the land that was going to be, I guess, kind of a parking area for his music venue, or he doesn't want to talk about the Castle Hill Apartments. So that was when I talked to him 3 or 4 weeks ago. He just wanted to talk about Mountain Park because he does have plans, and he's had plans there for quite a bit of time to develop it. So, I mean, he's one that certainly wants to talk to us.
Okay, and then the other thing is that this isn't going to be a formal hearing. We're looking at a discussion type meeting. Did you want to add to that?
I just wanted to report that I was successful in contacting the general manager of Wyckoff Golf Club, and he was interested in meeting with the group and having discussions about how the properties, the reservoir and the golf course might work better in the future. So,
It's good news.
yes.
So it seems like, we may want to have some of those bigger property owners come, give them enough time to come and talk to us. And I think Kate made a really good point, and I was thinking a similar thing, that, some of the abutters may want to just provide, written information to us, or again, I think we should offer, individual members could talk to them, or folks could come to present to us. I think, if we had more than, again, I can imagine both Eric and, that could fill up a whole meeting, just having Eric and the golf course owner, I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know what others think.
For sure.
Could we set that sort of thing up, do you think, with the phone call following the letter, where we'd ask if they would prefer a one-on-one, talk to the group, how long they would like to talk, how much time they want to give us?
Yeah, I think that would be a great option to put in the letter, to offer those, to contact the committee. And
Well, the letter does say in its last line, we will be calling you.
Yeah, I think it's just that the final paragraph right now says we'll call you to set up a time for a Zoom meeting, and we could instead just change that to say something about, we'll be contacting you to find out the best way to
discuss this further.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me write it down. Now, given that, I'll send the letter out again when I make these 2 additions to it. And I'd really appreciate it if everyone would get back to me with their okay or
Okay.
please add or whatever. So we have an informal vote of some sort, or a formal vote of some sort. Now, do you want to go ahead and do anything else in the meantime? Is there anything we want to look into? When should we have our next meeting? What are your thoughts on these discussions with owners?
I think it seems to me that we would want to, at our next meeting, have, if possible, one or the neighbors, butters, participate, because I think that would be the next place where we need to gather info. I'm not sure. Although we will have the information from Jennifer to review on potential recreational activities, uses, because we want to have that in play as well, be thinking about what the public might want. And I think we also need to consider or start thinking about when the city council order said have a public process, what that means and how we want to think through that public meeting process. So I think we need to think that through, what we want, what we would need to know or have in order to present or have such a meeting. I think we need to think that through as well.
Okay.
Getting the information from our abutters and near neighbors, I think, is going to be a part of what we'll want to be able to present at a public hearing.
Okay.
It would really be nice if COVID restrictions were lifted by then and we could meet where people could actually be in the room. But if not, obviously, we'll have to meet with a Zoom meeting platform. So any thoughts anybody has about doing that will be really important to talk about. I've been setting up the Zoom meetings, but I gotta tell you, I am the last technocrat in this group. I am at the bottom of the list.
I beg to differ with you. I'm the number one.
You've been doing well enough, so you've been keeping us here. So that's good enough. I do have a comment though about the, you know, it seems like there could be two possible purposes for the meeting with the general public. One would be to receive information before making any recommendations, and then a second purpose would be to share with the general public, you know, the recommendations that we may move forward with to the council, and they're pretty different purposes. So, you know, and so what I'm saying is, it's possible we could have to have two meetings. I mean, we're in the information gathering phase with the abutters, and then, but there could also be the general public for that before we can make recommendations. And then I think we owe the public, I think the council had in mind that we would share our opinion or recommendations before moving them. I mean, if I remember the reading of the charge. So it seemed like there were both those purposes, and I don't think they can both occur in the same meeting. I don't know what others think.
I agree with you.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then if I'm hearing things correctly, we want to have several meetings, either one-on-one or two-on-one with our neighbors. Gather that information together at a discussion meeting that we have when those meetings are over, and then plan for an information gathering meeting with the general public. Has that got it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do think, especially with larger landowners who might have plans, that it would specifically be useful to have them come speak with all of us if they're willing to. And it sounds like at least the two who were mentioned just a minute ago are interested in doing that. And maybe that's something we can get on our calendar for sooner.
All right, I agree. And in some ways, we heard some of that. I mean, again, DCR is such a key owner, and in some ways, you know, we heard a good deal of that tonight. I don't know if we need to hear more, but, you know, we didn't ask Jennifer to really present that kind of information. But I mean, you know, that's a crucial land. Or the trustees are pretty crucial. You know, so yeah.
I think that's a good point, and I was thinking the same thing. I would use tonight as a check Jennifer off as the fact that one of the abutters has spoken, as has the water department, which has got the same kind of a vested interest in it. So we've had an abutter speak.
Mhm.
So just to follow up on that real quickly with Jennifer. Jennifer, did you feel like, you know, we may have, you know, I wasn't part of the conversation with you know, that Marlene had with you, but do you feel like you had a chance to present DCR's view on?
I think so.
Related?
I'm sorry. Was there
No,
more?
go ahead. I was dribbling off there.
I think so. I mean, again, if you, for example, if you were, I think if you invited me back, I don't know what I would say, unless you had specific questions about our management of the reservation. But I think from the perspective of like the landscape, I think I've given you our perspective. You know, if you did, for example, invite US Fish and the trustees, if you wanted, you know, me or someone else for our agency to sit in on that meeting as well, like all the sort of conservation partners that abut the reservoir, I think we'd be willing to come back. And given that I've taken a bunch of your time tonight, and I think given you DCR's perspective, I could plan to be more silent unless there were questions, but just to be one of the conservation partners, I'd be willing to do that.
That's a good suggestion.
That's a great suggestion.
That's a really good suggestion.
That would be wonderful.
Yep.
Could we do that? Could we have a trustees DCR Fish Wildlife meeting?
I think that that would work very well. When I spoke to Josh Knox, he was kind of specific about the fact that they've done everything they want to do and they want to keep things pretty much the same way they are now. But I think having him speak to us in conjunction with Fish and Wildlife and with Jennifer would be a very good play.
If I might just add something, there's also the State Fish and Game, Department of Fish and Game owns a little piece on the mountain there as well. If you might want to include them as well.
Yep.
So how soon? So Jennifer, we're going to meet in 2 weeks. Is that too soon to pull something like that together, do you think?
I don't think so, unless, I mean, obviously we need to talk to the other folks. I guess I'm not sure what information you'd want. I think if you sent around specifically what kind of information you were looking for, I would imagine if the folks involved were available, it would not be too soon.
Well, of course, we've got to get the letters out. And then we have to call these people. From what I'm hearing, I think the easiest thing for us to do, if we're going to do the letters at all, is get the letters out. In the meantime, since Harry has already spoken with Eric about the music venue on Mount Tom, we could probably get him to come in easily for the next meeting with a call. And then we'd have a month to get the rest of this organized.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric would come in without a problem in 2 weeks.
Other comments, thoughts?
I think that's a good plan there, because it would be good to, it's time to hear from a private owner for sure.
I mean, I can do it with just a call if you want me to do that.
Why don't you?
Okay.
You got a copy of the letter
Yep.
on email, so you can use it to tell him about the things that we're interested in finding out from him.
Okay. No,
And if he wants it forwarded to him, by the time you talk to him, I'll have the one with these 2 corrections in it sent out to you, and you can get his email and just forward it to him.
should I wait until that before I reach out to him?
Yes.
Yeah, I would,
Okay.
but you'll have this in the morning.
Great.
Okay.
I see Kate has a question.
Okay?
I just have an unrelated thing to mention if this is other business time. I mean, related, but different.
Well,
Just to say that Aaron Vega, who's now our director at Planning and Economic Development, he mentioned to me the other day that the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission has land technical assistance grants. And if we thought that there might be any use for technical assistance, he thought that that was something that we could probably get a grant for. So I put that out there. I can find out a little more if that's useful.
They're always helpful.
I'm sorry, Dave, say again.
They're very helpful. Any experience I've had with the planning commission has been really good. Finding money.
First job out of college.
That's it. Yeah. But yeah, I would think it's a good idea.
I'll gather a little more information and bring it next time.
Thanks.
Great.
That would be helpful.
Great.
I just had one devil's advocate comment. And again, I agree 100% that we need to hear from private interests. I just wonder if we would want to think about, hearing first the conservation plans kind of en masse, so we just have it in our head, and then bring on a number of the private developers and hear that, just so we're not sent. Maybe that's not important. I know we just need to get moving in a pragmatic way, but I'm just wondering, if Eric's going to mention something to it, again, it's helpful to understand the conservation goals, then I think we can think about the development goals and how they fit into that. They're all important. Again, but that's why I said it was devil's advocate. So I don't want to, I just wanted to make that statement.
And the only I appreciate what you're saying. I voiced my opinion on it because I don't want there's so few private owners. I don't want them to think we're stacked up against them already.
And, we're just gathering information, so we're not, how should I say it? Just like Dave just said, we're not, trying to, poke somebody into the corner. And as long as we just gather information, which we have been doing, I'm not so sure it makes all that much difference as to who we allow in first. But, maybe it does. I don't know. I don't think it does.
I think the point's a good. I think the point's a good one, that we don't want to appear to be stacking it against them. So that's. I just wanted to put that out there and see how folks react.
I think we're both on the right track. Honestly, I do.
So would we both, for next time, ask both Eric and the owners of the golf course to come? Is that what we're thinking?
I would do them one at a time because I think you'd have that would be a lot of work. I think they'll both take a lot of time. I think
Eric will take a tremendous amount of time.
I believe you.
Guaranteed.
He will take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next meeting is March 2nd. And the meeting after that, of course, will be March 16th because here we are, 4 weeks and 4 weeks. We'll try for the conservation people as a group on the 16th, Eric on the 2nd, and then perhaps the beginning of April, we can invite, and Kip, this will be your baby because you'll be following up the letter with the golf course.
I'm happy to do that too. And when are you thinking? I mean, I don't know that we need to decide this right now, but when that would be the first meeting in April?
Like it would be the first, I have to put my glasses back on.
Yeah, so the meeting after the 16th of March, whatever that turns out.
Right, it would be April, long time.
There's a March 30th
March.
in there.
Well, that's 2 weeks. If we're doing two meetings a month, it's going to be April 6th. And I'm not available March 30th.
Okay, so I'll communicate to them tentatively for April 6th.
Great.
Good deal.
Okay. Then, Marlene, can you, I'm kind of stuck. I know how to get a hold of Jeff Knox. I have no idea how to get a hold of Mass or Federal Fish and Wildlife. Could you check with Jennifer and see if you can
I'll
get
work
her
with
to do
Jennifer
that?
and get the contact for all the state conservation people.
And then when you,
I can handle the Fish and Wildlife since I work for them.
oh, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I won't present. It'll be some, but yeah,
Okay, could you send me an address so I can get a letter to them?
of course.
Okay. Do you have both?
And
Do you have state and federal?
I do not have the state. I think,
I'll get that from Jennifer.
Okay.
Now,
Then I
what
think-
part, what
Yes.
part did Jennifer say that the state fish and wild or
State
game,
Fish and Game owns, she said there's a small piece of land that they own.
where is it,
I think it's on the ridge.
Yeah, look, it is on it. Look on the map, Harry, you'll see it.
Okay, all right. And the second thing is Eric for the March 2nd, but what did we decide on the 16th? Who's coming in?
Conservation Partners.
Conservation Partners.
Okay.
That would include Fish and Game,
DCR,
DCR,
trustees.
trustees of reservations.
And Fish and Wildlife. I know
Fish
it
and
sounds like the
Wildlife.
same group, but it's,
Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, US and state.
right.
And Jeff,
Jeff?
you have the address for whom?
US Fish and
US
Wildlife.
Fish. So I'll get the right state and the trustees' contact info from Jennifer.
I got the trustees.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, any other business, any other thoughts, anythings?
Another good meeting.
The chair will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
A second.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Good to see everybody. Be well.
Aye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
guys.
everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks.